Mistakes are a part of life. Sometimes, we make them knowingly, while at other times, we make them without even realizing the consequences. However, some mistakes are so big that their costs are unimaginable. These are the errors that have resulted in losses amounting to billions. Today, we will take a look at some of the most expensive mistakes in history, ones that have cost people fortunes, whether in terms of money, opportunities, or valuable possessions. From throwing away valuable cryptocurrencies to destroying priceless artifacts, these mistakes remind us how costly a small error can be. Let's begin with a story from the early days of the digital age, when a company named Blockbuster was a leader in movie rentals. Blockbuster was at the height of its success, dominating the home entertainment market. It was a time when people still rented DVDs and videos, and the idea of streaming movies online was far from most people's minds. Around 20 years ago, Blockbuster was offered the chance to buy Netflix, not once, not twice, but 3 times. At that point, Netflix was a small, struggling company focused on mailing DVDs to customers. The price for Netflix at the time was just $50 million, roughly 37 crore rupees. Blockbuster rejected the offer each time, thinking that the concept of streaming movies online would never work. The company believed that people would always prefer renting DVDs, and the idea of watching movies on the internet seemed absurd. Blockbuster's decision to pass on Netflix is often considered one of the biggest business blunders in history. If Blockbuster had purchased Netflix, they would have dominated the streaming industry today. Instead, Netflix has gone on to become one of the largest and most successful entertainment companies in the world. As of now, Netflix is valued at over $20 billion, a sum that would have been unimaginable for Blockbuster. Today, Blockbuster is no longer in business, and Netflix has completely reshaped the entertainment industry. The missed opportunity cost Blockbuster billions and marked the beginning of its decline. Now, let's move on to another mistake, this time involving cryptocurrency. In 2009, when Bitcoin was still a new and untrusted idea, a UK-based party worker named James Jules made a decision that would later cost him millions. At the time, Bitcoin was worth less than 1 cent, and very few people saw its potential. James, like many others, didn't take Bitcoin seriously. He minted 7,500 Bitcoins using his laptop, thinking they would never be worth much. He kept them on his laptop's hard drive, not thinking of them as anything valuable. Years passed, and in 2013, James decided to sell his old laptop. Before selling it, he removed the hard drive and kept it in a drawer, thinking he might one day need it. He didn't think much of the Bitcoins he had stored on it. 3 years later, in 2017, Bitcoin's price skyrocketed. 1 Bitcoin, which had once been worth less than a cent, was now valued at $17,000. In 2021, the price of Bitcoin reached $27,612. Had James kept his hard drive and sold the Bitcoins when they were worth thousands of dollars, he would have been a millionaire. At the current price, James could have been the proud owner of $22 million, which is around 1,500 crore rupees. Unfortunately, his mistake of discarding the hard drive, or failing to understand the value of what he had, meant he lost out on an incredible fortune. Let's now shift gears and look at a mistake that happened during the making of a Hollywood film. In the 2009 movie Hot Fuzz, there's a famous scene where a character has to smash a guitar over a pillar. The scene was meant to look dramatic, and the filmmakers made sure everything looked as realistic as possible. The guitar was supposed to break in the scene, but what the actor didn't realize was that this guitar wasn't just any regular instrument, it was an extremely rare and valuable one. The guitar was 145 years old and had been rented from the Martin Guitar Museum specifically for the shoot. The filmmakers had planned for the guitar to be damaged during filming, but they hadn't accounted for the fact that this particular guitar was priceless. Once the actor smashed it, the guitar was destroyed beyond repair. This mistake not only cost the production company a lot of money but also led to the loss of a piece of music history. Had they known the true value of the guitar, they might have chosen a different one for the scene. Another example of a costly mistake comes from the world of technology. In the early 2000s, a company called Nokia was at the forefront of the mobile phone market. At the time, Nokia's phones were some of the most popular in the world, and it seemed like the company had an unshakable lead in the mobile industry. However, in 2007, Apple released the iPhone, a groundbreaking device that revolutionized the smartphone market. Nokia, on the other hand, stuck to its traditional phone designs and operating system. The company underestimated the rise of smartphones with touchscreens and advanced software. As a result, Nokia's market share quickly dwindled, and the company lost its position as the leader in the mobile phone industry. Today, Nokia no longer dominates the market, and the iPhone is one of the most successful products in the world. The failure to adapt to new technology cost Nokia billions of dollars and led to the company's downfall. In another instance, a major mistake was made in the world of sports. In 1989, a baseball player named Mike Piazza was drafted by the Los Angeles Dodgers in the 62nd round of the amateur draft. At the time, Piazza was not seen as a highly promising prospect, and the Dodgers picked him as a favor to his father, who was friends with the team's manager. However, Piazza went on to become one of the greatest baseball players of all time, earning 12 All-Star selections and becoming a Hall of Famer. The Dodgers had the opportunity to draft Piazza much earlier, but they chose not to. As a result, they missed out on one of the best players in baseball history, and Piazza went on to have a career that made him one of the most valuable players in the sport. Had the Dodgers made a different decision, they could have had one of the best players in the league on their team for years to come, but instead, they lost out on a legend. Finally, we have a mistake that occurred in the world of aviation. In 2001, a company called Swissair, known for its luxury flights, made a fatal error that led to the company's collapse. Swissair had invested heavily in a new fleet of planes, but the company did not invest in the proper maintenance of its older aircraft. In 2001, one of the company's planes suffered a malfunction and crashed into the Atlantic Ocean, killing all 229 people on board. This tragic accident was caused by a failure to properly maintain older planes, which had been overlooked in favor of newer, more expensive aircraft. The crash led to the company's bankruptcy, and Swissair was forced to shut down. The mistake of neglecting proper maintenance and safety procedures cost the company not only its reputation but also its entire business. These examples highlight how small, seemingly insignificant mistakes can lead to enormous losses. Whether it's rejecting a business opportunity, discarding a valuable asset, or failing to properly maintain a piece of equipment, the consequences can be far-reaching. What makes these mistakes particularly costly is that, in many cases, the people involved had no idea that their actions would lead to such massive losses. In some cases, they simply didn't recognize the value of what they had, while in others, they failed to adapt to changing circumstances. While it's easy to point fingers and criticize these mistakes, it's important to remember that everyone makes errors, and no one can predict the future. However, what we can learn from these stories is the importance of being aware of opportunities, understanding the value of what we have, and being open to change. After all, one small mistake can sometimes cost us everything. Mistakes can happen to anyone, big or small. However, some mistakes are so costly that they change the course of lives, companies, and even entire industries. These mistakes are not always made on purpose, and in some cases, they happen because of small, seemingly harmless errors. Let's take a look at some of the most expensive mistakes that have been made in recent history. These stories are about costly blunders, from a typing error at the Tokyo Stock Exchange to a design flaw in a London skyscraper, and even a mix-up with the size of trains in France. These mistakes were not only expensive but also had far-reaching consequences. Let's start with a funny yet expensive error that occurred at the Tokyo Stock Exchange in 2005. The Tokyo Stock Exchange is one of the largest and most important stock exchanges in the world, handling billions of dollars in trades daily. A broker, working at this exchange, made a typing mistake that would end up costing the company a massive amount of money. The broker was supposed to sell a few shares for his client, but instead of entering the correct amount, he mistakenly typed in the number of shares incorrectly. He entered an order to sell 610,000 shares, instead of just 610. This seemingly small mistake ended up causing a huge problem. The stock exchange system accepted the order, and the broker's mistake went through without anyone noticing. The broker immediately realized what had happened. He was horrified to find that the system had accepted an order to sell 610,000 shares instead of 610. He quickly sat down with his hands on his head, regretting the error. As a result of this mistake, the company suffered a loss of $250 million, or about 1,875 crore rupees. The broker had only made a tiny error in typing, but it led to a massive financial disaster. In the fast-paced world of stock trading, where even a few seconds can make a huge difference, a small mistake can result in huge losses. This incident highlights how even the smallest errors can have catastrophic effects, especially in high-stakes environments like the stock market. Moving on to another example of a costly mistake, let's talk about a famous building in London that became known as the walkie-talkie building. In 2013, a new skyscraper was built in the city. The design of the building was unique, with a curved shape and reflective glass. The building's shape, which looked similar to a walkie-talkie, gave it its nickname. The cost of building the walkie-talkie building was a staggering $270 million, or around 2,025 crore rupees. However, after the building was completed, something strange started happening. People living and working around the building noticed that the heat from the sun seemed unusually intense in the area. It turned out that the building's curved shape and reflective glass had started focusing the sunlight, much like a magnifying glass. The sunlight was concentrated so much that it was actually causing things to melt. Vehicles parked near the building had their plastic parts melting, the floor mats in nearby shops were getting burned, and some people even reported that the heat was so intense that they could fry an egg on the ground. The problem became so serious that the building's owner had to compensate the people who were affected by the heat. Additionally, they had to put up a large screen on one side of the building to block the sunlight. The design mistake had not been noticed by the architects until after the building was completed. What was supposed to be a cutting-edge, beautiful piece of architecture turned into a dangerous problem for the area. This mistake cost the building's owners not only a lot of money in compensation but also in the necessary changes they had to make to the building. In yet another story of a major blunder, we look at an error made by the French National Railway Company, SNCF, in 2014. The company had spent an enormous amount of money, around $15 billion, approximately 82,500 crore rupees, to design and build a fleet of high-speed trains. These trains were meant to revolutionize the speed and efficiency of France's railway system. However, there was a small but very costly mistake made during the planning stage. When the first train was ready and arrived at the platform, the staff quickly realized that it was too large to fit on the platform. At first, they thought the platform might be too small, but upon further investigation, it was revealed that the train itself was too big. The trains that were being built were all designed with the same dimensions, so the mistake was repeated across the entire fleet. The trains were all too large to fit on the existing platforms of French railway stations. This mistake had not been noticed until the trains were already being built, and it left the French National Railway Company in a difficult situation. The company had to spend a significant amount of money, around 412 crore rupees, to shorten the platforms at numerous stations so that the new trains could fit. This mistake not only delayed the project but also cost the company hundreds of millions of dollars. The error came from a simple misunderstanding of the required measurements. A small oversight during the planning phase resulted in a huge financial burden and a major delay in the implementation of the new high-speed trains. These examples demonstrate how small mistakes can lead to enormous consequences, whether in the world of finance, architecture, or transportation. In the case of the Tokyo Stock Exchange, a single keystroke led to a massive loss. In the case of the walkie-talkie building, a design flaw caused widespread damage and a huge financial cost. And in the case of the French high-speed trains, a small mistake in measurement caused delays and extra expenses. In each of these cases, the mistakes were not intentional, and they were not caused by negligence. However, the consequences were severe. The lesson here is that attention to detail is incredibly important. Whether you are working in a high-pressure environment like the stock market, designing a new building, or planning a major infrastructure project, it is crucial to double-check your work. A small error, whether in typing, design, or measurement, can have massive financial and practical consequences. These mistakes also show how important it is to be thorough and careful in every aspect of work, as sometimes the tiniest oversight can lead to huge problems. While mistakes are inevitable, the key is to learn from them. In the cases we've looked at, the companies involved learned important lessons. The Tokyo Stock Exchange implemented stricter safeguards to prevent errors like the one that occurred in 2005. The architects of the walkie-talkie building learned from their mistake and made changes to the design. And the French railway company took steps to ensure that future projects would not suffer from similar errors. So, the next time you make a mistake, big or small, remember that you are not alone. Everyone makes mistakes, but the important thing is to learn from them and take steps to avoid repeating them. After all, some mistakes can cost millions, and in extreme cases, they can change the course of history.